It's at this point.
You don't deserve the spot. Sorry.
Half
Your
an
own
hour
fault.
after we're supposed to start. Hello, everyone, and welcome to round number 1 of our 8th Newcomers Tournament. I am Blues, here with Death Tacticus.
Hello.
And we are casting Group B, this time with Cordaris, Shell Cheesy, Rip Blip 23, and Base Invader. So what do you think of this map, DT?
Well, first I'm looking at the black market and I see it's a big black market. It's like claims and nukes. The black market is a camp colony, some high prices. Looking at the high power price and electronics price. So yeah,
Right,
probably you don't wanna found Nomad.
Right, Nomad will have a very difficult time. Though the one thing that sticks out to me the most, all the aluminum is in this one patch above the colony. Someone can try to make a play, deal with that. Maybe a scavenger around there.
Oh no, man.
Nomad might be interesting. They're gonna have
Oh,
a
but
really
that,
hard,
yeah,
because of the electronics price that you brought up earlier. They are gonna have a hard time getting off the block.
I don't mind it if he went to aluminum. But he has like a nice devil tile on the left, meaning he has like a carbon and silicon tile into one.
Right, and the reason you opened double aluminum started expensive, silicon started normal price. You need a lot of money to buy up these expensive electronics, so you do that. Let's bring in the money as quickly as possible. Cordaris, very standard opening, steel, iron, shell, also pretty standard opening, triple steel as scientist, and blip also pretty standard opening.
But he's really late with the aluminum claim, but that's basically because of
The
the
protection,
clouds.
yeah.
Yeah, protection. Interesting to see if anyone is going to buy any black market items soon. The cooldowns are getting off for everyone except Base and Fader. So.
Alright, I'm not really anticipating much black market soon. There aren't great places for most people to make money, besides Base Invader, from the aluminum. Everyone else has to contend with that aluminum price and then maybe go into reactors or something to get the money. So it's going to be a bit slow on that front. And there are also claims, always, well, most of the time we see a lot of claim purchases before anything offensive.
I see that Shell like took to water. He claimed them, but he's not building anything on it yet.
I assume he's waiting to build reactors, but I think he can already afford reactors, so that kind of blows a hole in that assumption.
I think he can afford 3 now already. Ooh, the scavenger rep is going into chemicals. That's a mistake because
right,
fuel's really high.
Yeah, with the high fuel price, it's just not going to be a sustainable market, even though it is a chem colony, which means that chem price will at least sustain itself a bit better. Most of the chem consumption still doesn't come into play until Patent Labs optimizations start coming down later in the game, so the price is still going to go down.
We say that like the Nomad has a difficulty upgrading the Nomad to where the HQ level 3 and going into electronics.
Yeah, a lot of that
is really nice.
Is just because of the double aluminum claim. He's done a good job of producing all that aluminum, and everyone else kind of hasn't been able to get into that market because he's effectively blocked off so much of it. He's been able to just capitalize off of that. Going into the electronics now should help speed him up for the rest of the way.
Cordaris is going into 2 reactors. His steel are not really working because he has 1 iron and steel is really low. Iron is like at the same price around that. He has like a nice, like yes, carbon, 1 water. Seems like nice.
Yeah, there wasn't a great reason for Cordaris to go into that 3rd steel mill based off the prices, and because he couldn't sustain that. Probably would have been better to see something else. What that something else would have been, not entirely sure. I guess more water would have been fine. Another reactor could have been fine, though dangerous unless he picks up more water. Some power would be okay too. Power has crept up very high. A geotherm would have done a nice job. I don't know that there is one left.
Oh, it's already really high, 180, so people want to go into that. So
Yep.
So well, dust storm going on now, so yeah, wind turbines are much better, of course. Rip the blip, his chemicals are not working. Yeah, fuel is really high.
A scavenger HQ has been upgraded.
He's
Yeah.
just upgrading now. I hope he's going to transition those chemicals into something else, and he needs wind turbines ASAP because that's dust storm. He can really use that one.
Yeah, the wind would definitely be a good choice for him, though it is a bit difficult to find a place for wind right now.
Yeah, this map
A
is
scientific HQ has
maybe
been
in
upgraded.
surprise.
A nomadic HQ has been upgraded.
That's the one thing I hate in observers. You cannot see that.
Mm-hmm.
Cordarus is going into 3 chemicals, which I just completely disagree with. They already auto-turn off, so that's like kind of a waste.
Right, for a lot of the same reasons we were criticizing Blip, this is actually just even worse for Cordaris because, well, he went into more chems, and he also, well, I guess he does have carbon, but probably shouldn't have that carbon yet.
I guess they're thinking like the power colony is consuming 1.4 chemicals. I think chemicals will go high.
I mean,
But
even then, when food is already this much more profitable, there's no great reason to do that. Remember, the X key is your friend. You can see a lot of good information there. Farms at plus 79, chems at minus 29. Cordaris doesn't have the water to sustain farms on top of the reactors, but he just did upgrade. He could get another pump down now, and it'd be perfectly fine. Instead,
I like
yeah.
I like what Shell is doing. Like he's going into 4 farms. Most of the time you won't go for 4 farms because yes, like there's not a lot of water in there. Food is really high, so I'm fine with it this time. It's like 1 geo, 3 steel, and 2 aluminum. Aluminum is hard to get, so it's high. He just needs teleportation, and then I think he's in a really good spot.
Right, he definitely has a strong set of claims, and going forward, once the nukes start flying, I think he should be in a great spot. As long as he manages to hold on to this aluminum and keep upgrading, I don't think he should have any problems.
Base Invader has been level up. He's going for nanotech. He's already at HQ level 4. He's doing really nicely. It's basically because of this aluminum. It's really high, and he's already in 3 aluminum. It's really helping him.
Yeah, definitely. He's been doing a really good job of not selling down all this aluminum, just sitting on it. He knows that the price is going to continue increasing for the most part, especially since Flip moved into some electronics, which seems a bit ill-advised on his weaker aluminum. But yeah.
The only thing I want to see is that he starts nuking the aluminum of his opponents. That would be really... He would make a lot of money through that. Because everyone is still HQ level 3,
Right.
except him, so everyone needs aluminum to upgrade.
Either nukes or failing that, a goon onto his devil tile would have been really useful early. So far he's avoided getting that nuked, but once that gets nuked, his silicon starts looking a bit weak.
Cordarus deciding to just skip steel. I mean, I understand that. I would do the same, to be honest, but he needs more water to, like, for his life support production.
Right. Again, this carbon early on didn't really serve much of a purpose. It helped him get into chems, but again, chems weren't a great market. I think it was something you could have seen due to the fuel price, and also Flip moving into those chems early would have been much better served getting that water, and this single glass kiln also just not getting anything done. You can't have single production buildings effectively do things for you.
That's a mistake, but he's going for a pen lap now there. I also must comment on Lip Power, because he has 1 geo and 1 single wind turbine. It's better to just go 2 geos, so 2 wind turbines. Don't go like both of them, because you will need to use an extra claim onto the wind turbine to get like that nice bonus, but he didn't do that.
Right. In general, this game, power was always going to be a bit difficult for Blip without strong wind possibilities. He did claim that geo pretty early on. By the time he was looking for a second power claim, I think this other geo was already taken, the last geo. So he didn't have many options, but yeah, this is still not the option I would be looking for.
Carbon scrubbing, what do you think needs it the most?
I don't know, even.
I think
I mean,
Base Invader.
I think Shell could make good use of carbon scrubbing. Blip has his carbon, Base Invader has the combo tile, pulling in a fair amount of carbon.
I would say yes, but Shell already has cell protection, so in my opinion, he doesn't need it.
I mean, that is fair in some ways, but there's also... I mean, where's he gonna get carbon to teleport?
Only on the bottom. There's no other option.
Okay, the 2 tiles. I'm not sure that's what I'd want to work with.
No. How much did it go for? 28, I think?
Yeah. I mean, letting it go for 28 is probably fine, but
He's in beat up, so.
would have been
Base
nice.
Invader ready, going into Rip the Blip, he's buying stocks. Good work. Yes, he can finish the buy already, I think he should do that.
Right. He definitely has the money to finish the majority buy. Most of it is parked in water, so he might not realize he has all this money. Also has
And
two,
he has...
still has 2
balance.
claims sitting around.
And he has balance.
Mhm.
Cute. That's a mistake. Just finish the buy and
Scientific
you
HQ has been
should
upgraded.
be able to close out the game through that.
Right, I think Base Invader really does need to make this push happen now, though, because his claims are arranged really awkwardly. He does still have all his return claims available, but right now he has 6 remote water claims, which is not something he can afford to sustain. He needs to cash out of water before the market crashes, and he's left with nothing.
Yeah, he's not doing that. He's just losing money. I know Rip the Blip is defending himself. And he's starting to buy into Corderos, which I don't understand. You're really far behind. You need to invest in yourself. You can
Right.
do it.
Definitely in the situation Blip is in, when you're in D debt, when you're the HQ level behind, when you don't have any long-term investments, by buying into someone else, you're really not accomplishing much. You're just going to end up debt spiraling a bit more. You're not going to be able to finish the buy effectively most of the time. Can't afford to be doing that.
He also has like this fleshy dome spot like for 2 souls already. He's not building a fleshy dome for some reason.
Yep,
You can earn him a lot of money.
Pleasure Dome would be quite solid this game with this assortment of HQs. You have this one expansive, Scavengers, Nomads get a fair amount, Scientists not all that much, but better than nothing. Interestingly enough, Base Invader going for an off-world at the colony.
And he's going for Faker Machines, so it's kind of surprising.
Yeah, 2 plays that don't work together in any way.
You don't really want to build it next to the warehouses on the colony, because the black market is really cheap still.
Right.
And that dynamites and everything.
Yeah, the one upside is that there are no clear goon poppers, but dynamites, again, always just work fine as goon poppers. And unless you have an off-world up yourself, you're not really going to be worried about dropping dynamite on a goon.
You also might want to have a hologram on that and just change that into something.
Also, Base Invader really needs to start returning some of these water claims because he does not need plus 19 water a second on top of his 2.5k water.
He's going into glass, but this left is just awful. He's like minus 750, minus 800. It's like coming up his steps, which is just too much.
Base Invader definitely in a strong enough position that he should be
Oh.
wanting to pay off some of his debt.
Look at the cash out from Shell, 400k.
And that's really just all from food and all life support stuff.
No
No
one's
one-
producing that.
Yeah, no one's been competing with him in those markets. He's been hacking food, he's gonna hack fuel next. He's done a good job
Fuel.
of exploiting that. And there's no real reason he should have been allowed to exploit this quite so much, because Base Invader does have access to this much water. He's starting to rotate the electronics into food now, that's going to be helpful. He also just doesn't need to be in all this aluminum, he really needs to have all these claims back from the water. And he really seems to have just thrown away a pretty good lead. On the other hand, Scientist with teleportation, always going to be strong late. No big surprise that Shell managed to pull back into things very nicely. We did mention earlier that his territory was quite nice.
Always going for a different resource to hack with, which is also nice. So he did for food shot. After that, fuel one, and now it's going for oxygen. He has some upgrades queued up, which is also nice. And he's trying to defend himself.
Right, if there's one thing I would want to criticize Shell for, it's just you never need 4 glass kilns. It's never.
Well, I would disagree with that. Ever,
I mean, maybe if it's an extreme glass colony and there's very little silicon on the map, but otherwise,
yeah.
you don't want to have 4 really far away glass kilns.
I'm fine with it if he got extra claims on the black market, which he only did once. So, yeah.
I mean, I
Not really a
guess,
fan of it.
but I'd still rather have like 2 pairs closer, I think. I don't know. Well, Base Invader, I guess right now just doing what he can to stay alive, putting some stock into Rip Flip. Rip Flip will be a pretty good investment if you can manage the buyout, just because the stock price is so low. Once someone gets bought out, their debt gets wiped out, so you get the advantage of the full value of that subsidiary, despite paying a reduced price. But at this point, Shell is just so close to buying Base Invader that it should not come into play.
I must say that's like almost every player has some power issue going on. I want to like see more power from them.
Yeah, I
Because
mean,
if I look at core Corderos, it's like minus 3.6, just too much.
yeah, and a large part of that is just he decided to transition his wind into chems. Chems are making good money, it makes some amount of sense, but you have to be careful about having a place to go back into power at some point, and you have to watch that price closely.
It goes up really fast if you don't watch.
Mhm. Yeah, and
You always need at least 2 power sources, I think. Almost every time.
I don't know about that. But I like to play a little faster and looser with my power than most players, so...
I mean, for advice that I would give newcomers is stick with the power. Because
Yeah, that's fair. Especially this game, I think you could have predicted power being a bit troublesome, more so than other games, just because there are only the 3 geos, there are a shortage of good wind locations, and no one really picked up Superconductor, so there weren't a lot of things that normally help keep the power price a little more depressed.
I mean, there are not really any superconductor spots that you can use with geos and wind turbines. Maybe power with solar panels. But
Right,
with
I think
solar panels-
Base Invader in particular,
Oh,
as the Nomad, should be able to use solar panels, but he hasn't been using the silicon well.
you
Rip
have to
Flip,
live by Corderos.
yeah, that's a bit surprising. He's been making a lot of money, I guess, also off of life support. I'm not entirely sure where all of Shell's money went. I guess a lot of it went into buying up Base Invader stock, but
I disagree with him defending himself, like 9 stocks. He had like a lot of money. He just let Base Invader buy him to himself, like buy into Shell, and then you can get that stock back. It's like,
right, at that point, neither Corderus or Blip were going to be major threats to Shell. The main reason why you'd buy your own stock when someone's already buying into you is if it's going to be a close race, or if you expect other people to pile on. In this case, neither was true. It's better just to let Base Invader buy up your stock, and you get it anyway once you finish him off. Look at that financial instruments tick. 50k going to Base
50K.
Invader. 29k from Rip Flip, 21k from Shell. Not often you see numbers like that.
I always think that's a useless patent. But I guess
Not in this game.
this game is already over, but I must say this power situation which I already said like a few minutes ago, like D+7 dev for Shell and D+10 for Rip. That's only because of they didn't go for power.
Launch
That much.
affirmative. What
Yeah,
about?
they didn't really end up taking any steps to fix the power problems that were pretty predictable.
And Shell still doesn't have the power,
Mhm.
which
Yep.
can kill him.
Yeah, Flip really only has power because of this dust storm. Without the dust storm, he would still be having a lot of problems.
Methods continue to improve.
Oh, yeah.
He was still plus 1, I think.
I
but
guess he would be
still.
plus 3-ish?
I thought I saw +1, but I'm not sure.
Anyway, still,
Whatever.
Pleasure doing.
still very much in the lead still.
What goes on in there?
Although, if Quarterus's Offworld start really launching and jacking up that sub-income, and Riplip keeps paying off all this debt through this dust storm, he might have an outside shot. Probably not
I
gonna
don't
happen.
think so, no. I would like for Shell to hack something and just close the game. Because he's still like 100k short.
Yeah, he should be able to find a hack that would work pretty well for him. Not sure what exactly that would be. Maybe just not Silicon.
I might even pay off my debts if I was Rip. And not buy Shell stock.
Yeah, maybe, but when you're in 340k of debt, I don't think it makes enough of a difference.
He could pay like 200k now. So it's like 141 before the debt tick.
Yeah, that might be fair, and maybe you can survive just long enough for Shell's price to drop ridiculously from the debt tick.
Basically, my plan afterwards was just use the dynamite on sub that Shell owns.
I missed this last debt tick for Base Invaders financial instruments, but I'm sure it was
I don't
beautiful.
think we want to see it though.
I think it was probably in the nature of 70k. But yeah, Shell making a killing in the mid-game, based all off of life support. Base Invader taking a really nice lead off of control of the aluminum. Not really being bothered too much by the electronics, eventually going into the electronics himself, picking up some really nice patents as well, with teleportation in particular. Thinking Machine's also useful. But just not quite using the claims properly, too many water claims, not selling down the water fast enough, not really collecting silicon when he needed it, and it just all added up to him falling behind.
And he could buy Rip the Blip like early in the game, but he chose to not do that because he refused to sell his water.
Right. Getting that majority buy I think would have helped sustain him a fair amount. Just a really nice price boost and a small trickle of income. He wasn't that pressed for money at that point, so it's something he could have afforded. Even though I guess pushing for the Offworlds was also ended up being strong.
Rip Blip found it into Creda. I don't really like to see that because he needed to apply his buildings out of the Creda and then you need to ship a lot, which is not really helping. He had some power problems, I believe, early on because he went for one wind turbine and one geo. That's not really what you want to do. He also delayed his Fleshy Dome for like 2 souls, which was just not giving any money.
Right, even if you're concerned about the power price when you're building the Pleasure Dome, it's better just have it down and turned off.
Yep.
And generally, I don't think you should be worried about the power price unless you're making power money or you're really deep in debt, which I guess Blip was, but not at the point he claimed the tile.
Shell did a great job with his farms. Like he just went into a standard scientific got teleportation. A really nice hacks what he did in the mid game. I really like to see that. The only problem was the glass, like 4 glass, and he didn't have enough power, which really could have mattered in this game, but it didn't.
Right, I think my biggest complaint would be that he went into this patent lab, only picked up teleportation, and then moved into other things. I think there's definitely room for him to pick up patents that would help him deal with his power issues. Superconductor, cold fusion, something like that.
Superconductor, and then you don't need these steel anymore late game. Just go into solar panels and you should be fine. Corderos didn't have a lot of water early on. He had like 7 life support buildings, reactors and farms, but he had like 2 or 1 water, which
Right.
really didn't help him. He changed his wind turbines into chemicals, which gave him depth problems.
Right.
But
Chemicals were
overall,
Yeah, chemicals were a good market. I think he could have found another place for them, though. I mean, he didn't need quite... I don't remember exactly what his territory looked like, but with so many clumps of buildings around his base, he probably could have found another place.
he went into chemicals early on, which wasn't really going to make him a lot of progress. Same with the Blip. They both went into chemicals early on while fuel was already $100. Like,
Right.
don't do that. There are more markets, better markets that you can go into. I mean, yes, the colony is consuming chemicals, but you have to wait like for HQ level 3 or 4 for that.
Right, unless the chem price is starting doubled, then maybe you can get away with it for a little while, but you definitely need to plan for it to be a short-term move if fuel is starting doubled already. Because again, like we mentioned, chem price will always drop when people are producing it, even though the colony is consuming it, just because your production is going to outpace the consumption early on. So you gotta make sure it's sustainable, and if it's not, then find a different market. In this case, reactors would have been a good market. Food eventually gets to be a good market. I think for Cordaris, maybe skipping this carbon would have given him a lot more flexibility, and that third steel mill as well could have helped him not get stuck at HQ2 with all that debt.
Yep.
All
What's
right.
this game?
Just a quick look at Black Market. 3 claims for Cordaris. That was nice for him, and he just got stuck a little too long at HQ2, so he couldn't quite leverage that to push back into things late. 2 claims for Base Invader, 1 claim for Shell. But probably would have wanted to pick up some claims, and he probably had some room too early. Not sure what he was doing instead. EMPs all seem to make a fair amount of sense. Mostly dropping onto Shell. Right. Guess that's all I really have to say about that one.
Yep.
Okay, I guess also one part of Blip's coming back into that was a fair amount of optimizations. Chems, food, fuel, power, all doing good work for him.
I didn't do Group B, but thank God all the players joined me.